Hey everyone, it's Waddies here, and today I want to talk about Titanfall 2 and whether or not I think it's going to have a campaign mode, and why I think Titanfall 1 went in the sort of multiplayer campaign direction that it did. For the gameplay you're seeing, it's actually on Titanfall 1's campaign on the mission Get Barker, although you have to keep in mind Titanfall 1's campaign was basically just multiplayer missions with a bit of context attached. The map it's on is one of my favorites on Angel City. I'm using the Amped R101C carbine on my pilot, the 40mm cannon on my Titan, and this was a really blowout game where we went something like 300 to 82, and I believe I went a flawless 10-0 and ended up with around 85 attrition points, which is more than their entire team had. The only problem with this was that our team was actually decimating so hard that action could be sort of hard to find sometimes, so for purposes of the video, I'll just kind of weave in and out of the exciting parts. So to look forward to Titanfall 2, I think we have to look back at Titanfall 1, what Titanfall 1 tried to do, and why it ended up as it did. Probably unknown to a lot of people is that Titanfall 1 actually started off with a campaign being built. But around May of 2012, Respawn found themselves facing a lot of deadline pressures, and this caused them to put a little more focus into the multiplayer side of things, which ultimately contributed to the campaign being cut. And yet it is important to note that a single-player campaign for Titanfall was being built, and there's even footage of it in the digital book of the Final Hours of Titanfall. With this, I definitely think that Titanfall 2 is going to have a single-player campaign. One reason is because we've seen them worked on it before. They have an idea for the missions they want to do, they have an idea for the gameplay they want to do, they have a general direction that they want to go. And then the other reason is that Titanfall 1's sort of lack of a single-player campaign, or weird kind of multiplayer campaign, was a bit of a source of controversy when it came to lack of content, and it caused a lot of people to get sort of confused throughout the story and not be able to follow it overly well, so unless they were really revamping it, I don't see them going with that option again. One question we need to ask, though, is what makes Titanfall 2's development different from Titanfall 1 to make it so that they can include a campaign this time? Probably the biggest thing is that they have the core of Titanfall built now. They have their engine there, they have their core gameplay there, and they have a lot of the balance there. And that makes it so that they can start perfecting in other areas. They can put their focus on other things rather than just getting the game out like they had to do last time. And Respawn's already confirmed a lot of this, or a lot of the train of thought. When the community manager was asked about the possibility of Titanfall 2 having a campaign, as well as greater weapon variety, she responded, and I quote, "When you work on a game for so long, there's always lots of things that we, especially everyone here internally, has all these different things that they want to do. We've definitely heard the feedback. Obviously I can't comment on what we're doing in the next game, but the really nice thing about working on a sequel is that we've established the core of what Titanfall is. We have assets, we have an engine, we have all of these things that we laid the foundation for in the first game that now we can really build off of in the second. So, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that people are going to be excited about." While this is far from a full confirmation that there will be a campaign in Titanfall 2, it definitely is hinting in that yes direction. First of all, because there's some of the stuff we already mentioned, like the core game now being built and they can focus on other things instead of just simply getting it out there. But the other big thing is the acknowledgement of some of the complaints of the game when it came to lack of content, and of course a half of that is the camos, which I discussed in another video, but a big part of that was the lack of a campaign, the lack of expected modes that come with other first-person shooter titles. So whether the game does have a single-player campaign or not, you know they're definitely thinking about adding more modes to it and adding more content to the overall package. As a quick summary, I definitely think that Titanfall 2 is going to have a campaign, just because they're already working on one for Titanfall 1 and it was really time and budget constraints that cut them off. A lot of people want a campaign this time, and they have more resources to do it this time around with the core game already built. Now before we close out the video, I want to talk about one more thing, and that's whether or not I think Titanfall 2 needs a campaign, and whether or not I personally want it. The latter of those things is infinitely easier for me to answer, so we'll start there, and yes, I definitely want to see a campaign in Titanfall 2. I think there's some amazing things that they can do with it, and I'd also really like an offline single-player component, because there will be a day in, 25 years from now or something where everything's completely dead, but I want to go back and experience a thing that I loved so many years ago, and a single-player campaign's really a great way to do that. The other thing is that campaigns are actually generally my most anticipated thing in a first-person shooter game. This isn't always the case. Titanfall is really the only exception where it was like, I want the multiplayer, but for the vast majority of CODs for the longest time, I always anticipated the campaign more than the multiplayer, because even though it's the shortest section and whatnot, it's generally the condensed section that I have the most fun with, and so I definitely want to see a campaign. I'm really hoping for one. But the real question is, does Titanfall 2 need a campaign to succeed? And I really don't know the full answer to the question, because it's actually pretty complicated. The thing is that multiplayer has become really prevalent in the market recently, and campaigns are getting more and more drowned out. But there still are people like me who really enjoy campaigns and really want them, so a market definitely still exists for that direction. And the other thing is that, considering all of Titanfall's complaints around lack of content and stuff like that, I think they would really benefit from coming out and be like, hey, look at all the stuff we got now. And sort of tying into that, campaigns can make excellent marketing material, because there's this kind of like weird psychology that goes on. People that like only play multiplayer, like we'll take Call of Duty, people that only play Call of Duty multiplayer, they'll see the first trailer for the new like campaign for the next Call of Duty, and they'll be like, yeah, this looks so good, man, even though they never intend on playing it. And the things that you have to ask, is all of this worth it? Is the market big enough to justify the gigantic cost and effort that a campaign takes? Is the marketing material that you can get worth it for the giant cost that a campaign takes? For me personally, it won't affect my decision for Titanfall 2 only because of how much I love Titanfall, but for almost any other game, like we'll take the upcoming Star Wars Battlefront, I will not be getting Battlefront immediately because it doesn't have a campaign. I'll be waiting until it gets cheap, because it's just really not worth my purchase as it is right now. Anyway, I definitely think that they should have a campaign. I think that enough people want it to justify it, and I think it gives them a huge marketing boost considering the reaction when it wasn't there for the first game. Anyway, that's it for the video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. I'm Waddies, and I'll see you in-game.